In continuation, we'll be discussing around the achievement of how to achieve the SDG goal 2030, particularly from the standpoint view of understanding initial coin offering, because initial coin offering, though it is being done in a very different format, because here the candidates in the core group, that is particularly kind of an off market setup, it is done in a manner where the candidates are selected. They are the investors who are responsible for building around sustainability for the longest time. So, we are going to deep dive into the understanding of achieving the sustainable development goals, because that itself is going to take care of a lot of scripts in the smart contract. On top of that, being carbon negative is the new ball game, and particularly the standpoint view is very clear from at least the understanding of little bit from some standpoint that water is in scarcity, data itself is in scarcity in terms of the real input data, depending upon the historical data set, and that is the real historical data set, not a data set which is being just made up. With the real data, real outcomes are very much possible in terms of how the candidates utilizing World Wide Web are able to get or earn a living which is good enough for the folks who are in tier 2, tier 3 cities, in villages. And particularly, let me tell you, in India we call it villages. However, in other places, particularly from the standpoint view of China, it's called province. I'll put myself on mute, retrieve some data sets, and then we start the discussion. If you have any questions, put your questions in the comment box, and we'd like to understand the nuance behind the real use case studies which are already developed and certified by the authorities and the regulators, because for the standpoint view of the 6G to be in place, countries are going to play a very pivotal role, and particularly from the standpoint view of protocols, which should be understood in a manner which is not understood in terms of smart contracts, because now the number game is over. What I mean by number game, the number 100, the number 1000, the number 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 mil, 1000 mil. We are talking about quadrillion here. Quadrillion is 10 raised to the power 5. And that's the economy power of what it is when we combine the online world, the offline world, the quantum world. So these are three quadrants, and the 25% we are taking it as a ESOP pool for now to analyze and realize what is feasible, given that quantum has loads of dimensions, and those dimensions can be achieved with the historical data set in a fast, speedy manner. Putting myself on mute, and we'll restart in a while. Okay, we start with the tagging part first of all because the orientation of the tagging has to be right. And perhaps it's always good with aligning your whatever you're doing with the operators, stakeholders who are important in terms of understanding the protocols and understanding the landscape of the protocols in terms of the relationship models which can be built, the tools which can be made, the added advantage of just going back in the historical data set to look into to extract the transformation, and particularly there's something called as ETL methods. So ETL here stands for extract, transform, and load procedures. So when we're talking about warehouses, there is a lot of, I wouldn't say tech, but simple data flows around how to operate a warehouse. The ETL data flow is utilized in that. That is particularly the extraction, the transformation, and the loading of the procedures and the methods. In that particular domain, we have 6.gf 16 slash 254. For the software matrix, we have G06F 8 slash 77. Machine learning is G06N20 slash 00. We have been talking about it for the longest time. Assembling learning, which is something one needs to put their head into, is G06N20 slash 20. Then we have the dynamic search techniques, dynamic trees, which are branched and bound, 60GN5 slash 01. For the resource workflows and the human project at the enterprise and at the organization planning, we have these models which are around the tagging part of G06Q10 slash 06. Now let's talk about the protocols. I have been very vocal about the understanding of the protocols, and the cross breeding around the protocols is something which needs to be looked in depth. So these protocols, which are very well defined, are where the application is distributed across the nodes in the network. Now, how the application works around the node, nodes are, in very simple words, use it as a candidate. Candidates in the offline world who are nodes and who are logging in for that particular time duration to execute the problem statement at hand, and then they are delivering the OPDs. And the OPDs here stands for one page document, which is particularly understanding of how they are able to resolve the problem statement. I have a fun food to eat. Okay. Uh, Fun food would be cookies. I have chocolate cookies with me. So it's already November. So it's a treat time and it's a gratitude time in the month of December. So the answer would be chocolate cookies. Okay, now let's get back to the protocols. The next very important protocol is adaptation for proprietary, which I love. I mean, I'm all about being proprietary in nature in terms of the data flow, trade secrets, and the like. It is protocol adapted for proprietary and special purpose networking environment. Say, for example, sensor networks, medical networks, networks in vehicles, or remote metering networks, that is H04L67/12. Then we have um, network services using third-party service providers, that is H04L6753. Then grouping and aggregating service requests for unified processing, that is H04L67/566. So there's something called as UDP, that is user datagram protocol, that is UDP. We already know about TCP, that is transmission control protocol, and of course internet protocols, that is implementation adaptation of the IP. Perhaps I would like to deep dive into this one. This is quite interesting that way. Give me a moment, I'll just note it down for further research. And particularly, we are looking at achieving the SDD goals with the assistance of the smart contracts and the DAOs in deployment, which takes care of human intervention only required at the critical control points. Rest everything is managed in a beautiful fashion 24 cross 7, even when the candidates are sleeping. So it's not important that Say, for example, one of the use case studies which we are working right now is we have a use case study of 25 candidates selected globally, and they are servicing 24 cross 7. That is one data set. The other data set we are trying to work upon is, which I believe I'll be working on in the month of December, just to see that, because December being the month of gratitude, we want to give the candidates the breathing time, just not being logged on, but uh, assisting them to be their better versions. And for that, we are defining the critical control points in a manner whereby they don't have to be online 24 cross 7, and reduce their propensity of being online and just be offline and upskill themselves, be in the gratitude stage, because that is going to be, it's kind of, look into the number 78. People who understand that would be able to appreciate the number 78. Okay, so we looked into this. Let's get back to this. Okay, so we talked about the user datagram protocol. So I'll just UDP. Okay, we have this in order. Next, we have let's understand the data flow of this particular application. Okay, let's. So we talked about this. So the object orientation or the object oriented is 6 not GF 8/24. Um, so when we are talking about the understanding of the analytical part of the big data, honestly speaking, the easy way out is to consider big data as absolute zero, because most of the input data, if you go to the basic data set of maybe the name, maybe the address, the easy way out is whether one very simple event is whether that one candidate has all the documents which are supposed to be proof, which we're talking about in terms of KYC. Do they have all the same addresses? If there has been an address change, why did address change happen in the first place? And that is how you identify the candidate as a mischievous candidate, or you identified it as a normal candidate. So forget about putting people into that neutral group. Just take it as mischief, non mischief. It's very easy. I mean, go back to your English lessons of class 3 or class 2. I don't know how many people have actually had very good English lessons at their kindergarten stage. But in the initial years, it was like, either it's an yes or a no. There's no middle path. And that actually works, and it works wonders. Um, so this is something you need to look into, where we are looking into big data, and that in some part is not big data. Then the data integration processing, utilizing the machine learning tools, that is particularly just the data flows as to how the data has to behave to handle a situation in question. And then we have enterprise Internet of Things applications in a development platform. So then you have the dashboards and whatnot. Okay, let's look into this. So we have platform as a service, that is PaaS, that is for design, deployment, development, and operation for the next generation IoT application. But honestly speaking, what IoT application are we talking about when the input data itself is falsified? So first of all, we need to negate the input data and we need to get rid of the falsified data or kill those codes so that whatever the coding is being done, so we can just dial up the right coordinates to get things done in a fast speedy manner. And particularly there are pre-built applications which are available right now for productive maintenance, sensor health, enterprise energy management. But here the focus is to achieve the SDG goals 2030, capital asset allocation, fraud detection. Oh my gosh, that needs so much attention, particularly in countries where there is so much of corruption. So countries which are going through a thread of corruption, they can deploy this and they can just negate the data groups and understand, like even terms like GST is not helping out. I mean, it's just a way to negate something which never existed and not being utilized the way it should be utilized, because at the first time itself it was to increase the income group of the candidates. However, it has turned around and it has just like, I would like rather say, it's kind of a pizza which is being sliced up in so many pieces where nobody knows where the piece is going. That kind of entropy is what corruption is all about. And to deal with corruption, we had blockchain at the first stance itself, which is very important to be deployed. Then we talked about software as a service and the like. So there's another term when we talk about the new generative CRMs. There's something called as human capital management. Oh my gosh, human capital management. What are we talking about? Are we trying to control these humans? That's the question we need to answer when we are utilizing the new world order, which is already discussed, which is online world, offline world, quantum world, and plus 25% of the ESOP pool of whatever is not known. So that is what ESOP is, because in most of the cases, the ESOPs are done in a manner whereby the vesting clause itself is drafted in a manner where you're not able to recognize the reality, which is part of it. So just give me a moment. I'm being pinged and I need to answer this. Okay, so when we are drafting the smart contracts, and particularly when we are trying to understand the dispute and the protocol dispute which can arise between the parties at hand, whether the stakeholder is an operator, whether the stakeholder is whatsoever, it can be done. The question is whether that should be executed at the first place or not. We need to have the core very strong. And for the core to be very strong, you need to look into a system which is including uh, multiple modules and submodules at the same point of time. Each is having a data definition section or a data field definition. So we talked about it. Don't keep the words open-ended, because the dispute arises when the words are open-ended. If the words and the clauses are close-ended, there is no doubt of the execution in the way it should not happen. It will happen the way it has to, because the data set itself has been taken into consideration. Then what we're trying to do is providing the interface across different programming languages, protocols, and storage elements. And here we have, excluding the first type, the subset or the submodule which we are trying to utilize is from an application point of view. And then we have a database structure, language, and a format. That itself can be different. When we are talking about the machine learning and trying to understand the protocols behind it, it is always the problem statement. What is the problem we are trying to resolve? So take the problem statement of just achieving the SDG 2030, because 2030 achieved, a lot is going to get into place, because a lot of imbalance in the on the planet is going to be just I would say settle down, because the biggest blockchain is the nature. And once the blockchain is the nature, and blockchain is the nature, and then you are actually resolving issues in terms of, say, for example, the easy peasy way. If you go back to the school understanding of very basic elementary science, is how clouds are formed. It is particularly heat is generated. Heat is generated because of the heat, the water is evaporated. And once the water is evaporated, the weight or the whatever the volume or whatever the pressure, I'm not getting into technical terms here. The point here is, because of the air and because of the evaporation itself, the cloud formation takes place. And then the wind plays its own role. And that's how, the ethos of the planet is formed. So I'm talking in very basic terms. So what we are trying to understand here is the execution of the applications in terms of what are we trying to achieve and what is the key value score. The scoring becomes very important. When we talk about possibilities and probabilities, there's something called as biostatistics that can be utilized, but that itself is questionable in terms of whether it can be achieved in the new world order. Because it's a new world order, it's a altogether new canvas. At the same point of time, there is the old canvas, which has no clue whatsoever is happening in best of the capacities. You're seeing so much because there is imbalance. The entropy has increased so much that although these many folks have come online, but what are they doing online? Is that justice to the online world is the question the internet is trying to answer in terms of the smart contracts. And these smart contracts are already there. It's just that you need to have that the Hawkeye approach to understand those smart contracts. So this is what I wish to discuss. And if you want, you can always utilize the Khastgir algorithm. You can just put it into your smart contracts and you will see the results yourself, because we are 24/7 working on it in different capacities and making it more robust for not only the 6G to work, but we are also going back to the other generative technologies where the deployment couldn't be done, but with the utilization of Khastgir algorithm, it can be done. Thank you for watching this out. Have a great day ahead.